For all verified facts, subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Hello and welcome. The India-China border spans some 3,488 kilometers of a line of actual control and is now one of the longest border disputes in the world. This troubled border saw its most recent eruption when the army clashed with Chinese forces on the 5th and 6th of May in the Pangong Tso Lake area in eastern Ladakh. Now, what made this different was the fact that 20 Indian soldiers were killed. Right now, both sides are talking of a disengagement, but the question is, will things go back to the point they were before May 2020? To understand this a little better, I'm now joined by Ajay Shukla, a journalist, columnist with Business Standard newspaper, and a retired colonel of the Indian Army. Ajay, thank you very much for speaking with us.
A pleasure being with you, Govind.
Right. So, Ajay, firstly, just a quick backdrop. Take us back to where this all started.
Well, to take sort of several steps back, this eastern Ladakh border has been a troubled border for quite some time now, especially in comparison with the Arunachal border, which is sort of more stable, has less incidents of this kind. So you've been having these Sino-Indian face-offs between patrols from both sides. From 2013, 2014 there was another one, 2017 there was one at Doklam. And there are certain flashpoints where this tends to happen more often than others. You know, for example, in the Pangong Lake, in Depsang, in Chumar, these are all places on the border in eastern Ladakh. Now, what has happened this time is unusual for several reasons. First of all, this has happened at the time of COVID, when Indian Army sort of patrols and divisions and formations normally come up to the border at this time of the year because the spring has set in, the winter sort of thaw is taking place. Troops from both sides are feeling out the border, sussing out the border, trying to sort of reach their patrol points and so on. And it tends to be a sort of vitiated atmosphere where patrols tend to clash. So both sides normally trot out their formations at this time of the year. But this year, for some reason, India didn't do so. And the reason that we're being told as journalists is that they didn't want to expose the troops to COVID, so they decided that this time they would give it a miss. But the Chinese came out in strength, and at a certain point in time, at the beginning of May, they crossed the border, entered 3 or 4 different places, occupied territory that even they had acknowledged in places like Galwan was Indian territory. And essentially, it was partly an intelligence failure from the Indian side in assessing that the Chinese would not come into Indian territory. And it was also an operational failure in that the Chinese were allowed to do so. So that brings us to the status quo that we are in now, which is that the Chinese have occupied certain territory that is Indian, and the Indians have deployed opposite them, and that's an uneasy standoff that is underway.
Right, but we have seen loss of life, possibly on both sides, and we know obviously for the Indian side for sure. So there was an attempt to resist or face off. Is that correct?
Yes, the loss of life becomes inevitable at a certain point in time when you have enough troops facing off, enough sort of vitiation of the atmosphere, enough tension running high on both sides. There are bound to be casualties. There are bound to be tempers that flare. And the way to avoid this is only to actually ensure that they never do come face to face. And as it happens, India and China have 5 full border agreements that are designed to prevent this from happening, but all of them appear to have failed in this case.
Right. So you said, Ajay, that the Chinese had actually now occupied land which they had previously not occupied. So what is the status today?
The status today is that the Chinese came in fairly deep into Indian territory in some places. For example, they were 8 kilometers deep in the Pangong Tso sector, in the now famous Finger 4, which is about 8 kilometers in from Finger 8, where the boundary ran earlier. The Indians then stopped them at that point when they were already inside Indian territory And then both sides have agreed in some cases to partially disengage, which means both step back 1 or 2 kilometers. But this demilitarized buffer zone that is thus created is all being created in Indian territory. So, even though the tensions levels are now lower, the fact is that the Chinese remain, in many cases, a kilometer or two deep inside Indian territory, and the entire buffer zone that has been created in Indian territory, not in equal territories from both sides.
Right. Right. So now both sides are talking about disengagement, including a statement from the Chinese side in the last 24 hours. So what does that mean then?
That means that they nothing more than that they are talking about disengagement. Disengagement is of any value only when it takes place, and when it takes place on an equal basis. As I mentioned, the Chinese keep talking about disengagement, but they simultaneously say that the territory that we have occupied is Chinese territory. So even if we disengage, we are not really acknowledging that it is Indian territory or vacating it for India. We still remain in occupation of some parts of Indian territory. So this disengagement is an unequal disengagement. It's a disengagement in which Chinese continue to be in occupation of Indian territory, and that's not a good situation for India.
Right. So apart from it being a matter of principle, how does this actually play out when, let's say, if they are a kilometer inside now, and this is obviously land which has, it's essentially no man's land in terms of occupation or inhabitation. I'm trying to say, my question is really coming at it as a citizen of this country, living in another part of the country. Why should I be worried?
I'll give you a very clear example of how disengagement and this sort of occupation of territory works with a practical example that is actually playing out even as we speak. In the Pangong Lake sector, the line of actual control ran along a spur called Finger 8. And there are successive spurs between the Chinese and Indian side that actually decrease in number as you come towards India. So you have Finger 7, which is 1 kilometer inside India, Finger 6, which is 2 kilometers, and so on and so forth. Now, what the Chinese did was they came and sat down not at Finger 8, which is the traditional line of actual control, but at Finger 4, which is 8 kilometers inside Indian territory. The Indians then sat down opposite them at Finger 4, making Finger 4 the effective boundary. So 8 kilometers already the Chinese have ingressed. Then they say, let's disengage, which means let's pull back a kilometer or two. So the Chinese pull back to Finger 6 and we pull back to Finger 3, which means that you have effectively acknowledged Finger 4 as the boundary. There is a disengagement zone which is welcome and should be there. But the rules of the game have been suddenly changed. The boundary is no longer Finger 8, the boundary is Finger 4. And so Chinese are in occupation of 8 kilometers of Indian territory. 4 of those kilometers are, 2 of those kilometers are disengagement zones, but they're still in occupation of your territory. And to that extent, it's a cause for concern for Indian citizens. One could very well say that this is territory of no use to man or beast and so on and so forth. But you're only then going back to Nehru in the 1950s when he was trying to say exactly the same thing.
Okay, right. So now the area that has been occupied, now does this portend in some way that they could go further because they've already advanced a little bit and entrenched themselves?
You put your finger on exactly the problem. The Chinese have established a precedent. They have seen that India is willing to accept this loss of territory without resort to active hostilities. They have seen that they can get away with it. And the question is this going to just not lead to anything else? Or are the Chinese, is the People's Liberation Army going to, in successive years from now, try and extend this nibbling, salami slicing tactics even further into Indian territory? My belief is that once you have established a precedent, you have seen how the other side reacts. And if it's to your favor, then you tend to continue with that precedent that has been established. And that is the fear, that from now onwards, the Chinese People's Liberation Army might reach the conclusion that it is okay to nibble away at Indian territory and the Indians will not react.
Right. So if you look ahead now, how could this play out? As in, what are the options that India has at this point of time in the context of the talks that are going on?
The talks are one aspect of the entire sort of negotiation process, and the military movements on the ground and the nibbling of territory and the back and forth movements of the front line are another aspect. Now, let's leave aside the talks because that's something that is happening at the diplomatic level over telephones for the most part, and there's very little that can be done to influence that. Both sides have their clearly stated positions and they are sticking to those positions. On the ground, however, that is where the real action is taking place, and that is where the military commanders are talking. They are deciding what they will concede, what they will not concede. And for the Indians, there are three clear options right now. One option is that they do what they're currently doing, which is given the nomenclature of mirror deployment. They've sat down opposite the Chinese, mirroring what they're doing. And that means the Chinese can't enter any further. The Indians can't go further into Chinese territory. They physically blocked each other. It's a stalemate. The second thing that the Indians can do is to attack the Chinese and physically evict them, push them back. And that has the danger of potential escalation of a greater degree of hostilities. That's something that has to be weighed with some care. And the third option that the Indians have is to go into Chinese territory in places where the Chinese are not present, the PLA is not present, and do what the PLA has done, which is to occupy unoccupied territory and then subsequently use that as quid pro quo in a negotiation process. So these are the three real options. Currently, we're sticking with option one, which is mirror deployment.
Right. And another question, Ajay. So, you talked about the advancement by the Chinese troops into Indian territory, and the conclusion or my takeaway is that Chinese troops are clearly in Indian territory at this point, having only receded partly from the advances that they've made, but still well within. Is there any dispute on this, or is this a matter of fact?
This is an absolute matter of fact for two or three reasons that I will give you. The government of India is now cravenly, I would say, arguing that the boundary is a disputed boundary and there is lack of clarity. They are essentially making excuses for the Chinese. But this excuse of a disputed boundary doesn't fly for two reasons clearly that I will tell you. The first thing is that the government of India has to be clear where its boundary lies. It cannot say, this is where I say my boundary lies, but the Chinese don't accept it. You have to have a boundary line clear in your mind. The Chinese have their boundary line, I admit, but you have to stick with your position, or else then you're effectively abandoning your position. Is the government of India willing to say that we are abandoning our boundary claim? No, it's not, for obvious reasons. So they also cannot then say that there is a disputed boundary and we will do it. The second thing is that Indian patrols have been going up, in the years before this, to their stated boundary claim, these so-called patrolling points or PPs that have become famous, PP15, PP17, PP14 and so on. They have been going to their patrolling points, thereby establishing their claim up to that line and returning. Now this year, the Chinese are not letting them go up to their patrolling points. And the third and most worrying thing is that the Chinese are willing to enforce their diktat by the use of force. So the Indians have only two choices. Either they accept what the Chinese are doing in the new Chinese version of the boundary, or else they fight. And that is the difficult choice that is before the government of India right now.
Right. Last question, Ajay. So, again, as a citizen, I always wondered, or I would wonder that is the situation under control? Now, that under control can be, of course, interpreted in many ways, but is this something that I should be getting sleepless nights about, maybe fueled by watching too much TV, or should I assume and expect my elected government to take care of the problem?
The elected government is a competent government, I would like to believe, but it cannot say that we will take care of the problem for the simple reason that there are two players in this game. You might want to take care of the problem, but if the Chinese idea of taking care of the problem is to remain an occupation of Indian territory, then you cannot take care of the problem without the exercise of force. And that should give you sleepless nights for sure, because the same government and the government before it and the government before that have failed to provide sufficient funding for their military. The military is weak in equipment and sort of many combat resources in many respects. And it's the Indian Army is a great army. They specialize in making do with very little. But fighting the Chinese People's Liberation Army, the second most powerful force on earth, is not something that you sort of contemplate with equanimity. So to that extent, yes, please have sleepless nights. You really should.
Right. Okay. Ajay Shukla, on that note, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your insights and perspectives.
Sorry for being pessimistic.
No. Thank you so much.
Bye. See you. Good to talk to you.